I want to thank the organizing committee and Selfie especially and Krina for organizing this. And I'm going to present a little bit of information, hopefully that will be useful for those of you that care about working in Armenia and technology and innovation in Armenia, to give a bit of an overview about who is online in Armenia, and possibly more importantly, who's not online in Armenia and what those people are doing. So the way I like to think about it is that we really can't know how to innovate without knowing for whom we're innovating. So I'll be giving these sort of broad strokes. This is especially important, I think, because I'm sure all of you in your mind have this imagined Hayastansi population. The people that you know, the people that you think you know, the people that you think of when you imagine, who are those people in Armenia at this moment, right? And I think for many of us, it's perhaps this dual vision of a very hip, fashionable, interesting Yerevan sees, and then this other extreme of people living in a lot of poverty, when in fact, the majority of people are middle-class families trying to get by, work with their kids, educate their kids, make a good living. And these people I want us to be thinking about especially when we're thinking about innovation, because this is the majority. And these are people that aren't often visible to us, but they're important too. So I'm going to talk first a little bit about the broad internet, brief history of the internet in Armenia. I want to talk first about household internet ownership. And a lot of the data I'm going to use today is from the Caucasus barometer, which is a fantastic project that now is a decade old, that does an annual public opinion survey in the South Caucasus. If you aren't familiar with it already, you can go to their website and you can play around with data. It's really fun. I work with it a lot. So this looks at households that have internet access. And today, in November of 2015, about half of Armenian households have access to the internet. And this might sound low to you if you live here in the US or you live outside of Armenia, but half of Armenian households having internet access is a huge accomplishment. And I'm going to talk about some pivotal moments. Looking at people online in Armenia, today we see that 43% of Armenian adults, this is 16 and up, Armenian adults are online every day. Again, this might seem low to you, and in the US right now, we know that 77% of American adults are online every day, so this is quite a bit lower. But having looked at this stuff for many years, this is huge. This is a huge jump. This is great news. But I want to focus now a little bit more on that third that has never been online. So Armenians that are not going online, who are they and what are they doing? The 32% that are not online, sorry that the slide didn't come up with the percentages, but we have about a quarter of Armenians that are not online say that they don't go online because they don't have access. What determines that? This is usually for economic reasons. Occasionally, and in the past this was much more so, rural people can't get any access to the internet. So this is something that could be resolved with economic improvement. We also have another quarter that just say, I have no need to use the internet. I don't need it. Changing those people's minds is pretty tough. They don't use the internet for work, they don't use it for communication, and so those people kind of have remained stable over the years. We also have a quarter, it's a quarter that are not interested in using the internet. This population has changed a lot, and this is often people move out of the not interested category, often because of a life change. So for example, the son goes off to be a migrant worker. Now you might be interested in using the internet so you can communicate with him. And then we have 17% of non-users that say that they don't know how to use the internet. I'm going to come back to this point later because this is possibly what can be most easily resolved. In terms of how people are getting online, and this is of great interest to me, I've done a lot of studies on this if you're interested. So 37% of households have no internet device. 11% are mobile only. This number has been shrinking every year. I did a study in 2013 that about a third of households were mobile only. So we've seen a big shift from people that only access the internet on a phone to now also using the PC. 30% PC only. They only access the internet versus via a computer. And then we have a pretty big chunk of people, 22%, that probably, like most people in this room, access the internet sometimes from a smartphone, sometimes from a computer, whatever's most convenient for you. Let's talk a little bit about mobile. This is one of the biggest contributors to increased internet access in Armenia in a way that we don't see here in the US. A lot of people here had internet at home via a computer far before they had via a mobile device. That's not how it worked in Armenia. So 95% of Armenian households have a mobile phone. Pretty much everyone in Armenia has a mobile phone. It's been this high for years, as I'll show you in a moment. Most households have multiple phones. The average was 2.41, so most adult household members have a device. Over the years, there's been a big increase. You can see that for the last couple of years at least, I mean, we've hit in the 90s. So everyone that's going to have a phone pretty much has a phone in Armenia. Interesting history of this, you see this big leap, 2005, 2006, 2007. That was when the telecom monopoly was broken. And the introduction of prepaid cards that you could buy 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes at a time, that changed everything. And you all of a sudden saw people with an access to a mobile phone double. You can also look at some of the increases when there became 3 mobile providers in Armenia and competition increased. But so now mobiles are in everybody's hands. I do want to point out to you though, I assume most of the people in this room probably have an iPhone or an Android phone as their phone device. That is not the case in Armenia. Most people that are using a mobile phone are probably using one of these kind of Nokias that you might have in your bottom desk drawer sitting there, right? These are still incredibly common. This is the best-selling phone in the world. It's the best-selling phone in Armenia. This is what a lot of people have. Some people have 2 phones, I have a smartphone too, but this is what a lot of people are accessing via. But we do have people that are certainly using smartphones too. About a third of Armenian households say that they access the internet from a mobile device, so we're going to assume that smartphones are pretty common. I also looked at Facebook's own data. Facebook will tell you things. So for example, let's say that you want to sell something in Armenia. You can say, hey, I want to make a Facebook ad, and you can say, all right, I want to sell this product to recently engaged women from ages 20 to 30 in Yerevan. You can get to that granular level. Here in the US, even to more specific psychographics. But you can also learn numbers of users, so that's where this data comes from. So 57% of Armenian Facebook users are on a smartphone, and 13% are on a tablet, so most people that are accessing Facebook in Armenia are doing so from a portable device. But I want to point out here the connection speed, that 39% of Armenian Facebook users are on a 3G connection. So even though those of you that have been to Armenia and are like, actually, the internet speed can be great, remember that that's maybe what you're accessing, but a lot of people are accessing slower internet. And you even have 6% accessing a 2G connection. Also importantly, 44% of Armenian Facebook users are on an Android device. So even though I'm sure everyone here loves their Apple devices, if you're thinking about making an app for Armenia, maybe the iOS universe isn't the best place for that app to launch. Android might make more sense. So let's talk about computers. Armenian household computer ownership, we see now about 50% of Armenian households, about half of Armenian households own a personal computer now, so that's great. Increases over the years. That big jump in 2008, 2009, that's when netbooks became about $200. That was really the changing point in Armenia, when people could buy those cheaper PCs. Importantly, though, in the Caucasus barometer, when people are asked to rate their own personal computer skills, note here, almost half of respondents, adult respondents, say that they have no basic knowledge of how to operate a computer. This is self-report, granted, but half of Armenian adults don't think they know how to work a computer. And only 4% say that they have advanced knowledge. Now, this is not a quiz on how to save a file, but this is really, really important. And there is, without a doubt, a gap, a skill gap that exists in Armenia that could be resolved by, I don't know, more computer classes or something. Same thing with Facebook. I just want to point out that only 1% of Armenian Facebook users are on a Mac. I'm sure everyone here loves their Macs, but this is really, really important. And in general, Armenian PC Facebook users are using older versions of Windows. Going to talk briefly about what people are doing online. The most popular activities in Armenia for people to be engaging in, and again, this is for adults. I'm sure kids are doing much cooler things like they are here. Half of Armenian internet users regularly use Skype. This is not that surprising. I have a paper from a couple years ago that looks at Skype use in migrant labor families. It was a big motivator for families to get online. A little less than half of Armenian internet users are on social networking sites. Search is only less than a third. A third of Armenians are using search function. So I want to point out here that the activities that people in Armenia are engaging in when they're online might be different than the activities you do. So for example, I know I wake up every morning and I look at the news first thing. Anyone else in here like me? Okay, I feel a little bit better. That phone next to my bed, it doesn't feel right. But then I look at the news in the morning, right? But only 22% of Armenian internet users are using it for news. That's really different in the US. And so this is an opportunity to better understand what exactly are people doing online and how might it be different than the ways that we all are. Also in terms of what sites people are on. So 31% of all Armenians, this is of kids too, have a Facebook account, okay? Third of the country. And regularly access it. However, 82% of youth, ages 15 to 24, have a Facebook account. Armenian young adults are on Facebook, for sure. But importantly, over a third of all Armenians have an Odnoklassniki account. This is the Russian Facebook. These are active people using this. So they're not necessarily on the same sites that you might be here in the US. Another third are on a different Russian site, VK. And despite how much fun it is to be on Twitter, only 8% of Armenians have a Twitter account. So those 8% might be really great people tweeting amazing things. Actually, it's mostly like Justin Bieber and One Direction. But there are some great Armenian Twitter users. But the average Armenian is not on Twitter. Okay? So just some take-home points. Armenians are online for sure. This is super. They're often on Android mobile devices. They're definitely frequently on mobile devices. They are more often than not on a slower connection than what we experience here in the US. And what they're doing online is frequently social, not necessarily for business purposes, for educational purposes, for social purposes. And that's totally okay. Sometimes we get in this attitude about sort of judging people for what they're doing online. Like, oh, I donated those computers to that school and those kids are just playing video games. It's like, well, you know, your kids are playing video games too. And I'm playing Candy Crush on my phone all the time too. People do fun stuff online and they do social stuff online, and that's okay. We should really remember, though, that at least according to the Caucasus barometer, computer skills are quite limited, and this is a tremendous problem. Finally, who's offline? They're offline for economic reasons, and this isn't going to change until we see big economic jumps in Armenia. That first chart where you saw some big leaps, those correlate with huge increases in GDP. When we saw the big economic crash in 2008, we saw a flattening out of internet. So economic changes really, really matter, and the poorest of the poor are not going to be online. It's just a fact. So I want to leave you with this. I think it's great that we're here talking about innovation, but I think it's really important to be also remembering that it's not necessarily about innovating for people in Armenia, but we're innovating with people in Armenia. So with that, thank you so much.